Good morning to a semi-prepared rant. It's not a rant. I'm not angry at anything. I just had a little idea for a video yesterday when I was driving my mom to the airport and I listened to New in Rock on Apple Music. And one thing new in rock was Eric Clapton, A Woman, My Woman, The Woman, something like this, about a woman. And there's a little outro solo, and I was like, oh my God, that's horrible. Not the playing, but the tone. But the thing is, that's just me. So I read hundreds of comments every day. We go on Instagram and Facebook and other forums and whatever, and everyone's got opinions about guitar. We feel that in the guitar world, opinions are stronger than anywhere else, but that's of course bullshit. Any hobby has opinions, of course, is it O gauge or whatever gauge it is in model trains or gas-powered model airplanes versus electric. I mean, cars, electric cars versus, and it is opinions everywhere. And in hobbies, even more so. But I think what we need to realize is that our opinions about guitars and guitar tone and what works and what doesn't and what's great and what isn't great, they all come from our personal experiences. And in the case of music, it's very strong opinions and very strong experiences and very strong memories. So whatever, I was going to say impregnated you, imprinted you as like the first experience of listening to music and doing something for you emotionally, that very likely put a very big dent in your opinion about guitars. Now, if that was, I don't know, let's say Judas Priest in the 80s, then very likely you are drawn to pointy guitars, Hamer and all that stuff that they had back in the day. And if you are a big Beatles fan and that really did something for you as a child because your parents were listening to Beatles and you looked at some pictures or whatever, then you would be drawn to a 335 and maybe a Strat or whatever. So you were definitely very heavily influenced in what we like based on the music that made us the musicians we are, or made us want to become the musicians we are. Tonally. Now, if you were influenced by music from the 70s, then certain tones are important to you. Fuzzes, squeaky, top-endy stuff, for example. Now, if I go and review a modeler and I click through the presets and I find sounds like this, I usually go to the sentence, that's not usable musically, which is wrong. It isn't usable musically from my vantage point as someone who's been not influenced but imprinted by a different era of sound. Okay? And in addition to that, in the early days, we had very bad recording. But oftentimes what you hear and what made you the musician with your preferences that you are is actually based on the music, listening to the music. And oftentimes I think you remember the sounds completely wrong. It's always when people sit on an amp and like, yeah, that's the AC/DC crunch tone. Well, it ain't. When you listen to Back in Black and all that stuff, that is an almost clean Edge of Breakup sound. Highway to Hell. That is in no way fat. That is in no way gainy. It's borderline clean. And when you see people say, oh, that's like that AC/DC sound, that is usually what they dial in or what they have in terms of a preset. So much more gain, so much more fatter, so much more modern and driven than what they actually had. I think we remember these things wrongly, oftentimes, if we're not a total specialist in the field. No Starbucks cup today, I learn. People's opinions on Starbucks are almost as drastic as on guitar stuff. So my point is, there's many points, but all we can do as people on YouTube reviewing things, we can try to be as open as we can be, and I am. I can review a fuzz and try to show you the pros and cons of it, what I can do with it musically. But you know what? In my musical background, there's missing a lot of information about what that could actually do and how it actually would be usable. Just like every channel that you watch, except maybe Tim Pierce, who's got a wealth of knowledge, will talk with their musical background, with their preferences background. So when I listen to that, A Woman or whatever it's called from Clapton, relatively new song, the outro sounded in the car so bad that it was like, how is this possible? They have the best studios, the best amps in the world. Clapton knows what he's doing when it comes to guitar tone. And in the car, it sounded as if he's taking a DS1, like some kind of overdrive pedal, directly into the board without a speaker simulation or anything on it. So it sounded like that really horrible, scratchy crap that you sometimes find in a cheaper modeler, maybe more expensive modeler. But the funny thing is, that wasn't what was happening. That's what I heard. That's what I have can you see it? Yeah, I have a Tesla, so the stereo isn't that bad. It's not a crappy system, but it really sounded like going directly into the board. Now, I recorded it for you, and now I heard it's a fuzz. It's a very top-endy kind of fuzz. Sounds like this. I would have never dialed that in. I think that's horrible. But to Clapton fans, that brings us back to some of the good old days. And it's not horrible. It's just not something that I would have done. And that to me, in the car, it somehow sounded like going DI. But you know what? Some of you might love that. We're going to get to worse examples, actually, than that. I wrote some stuff down. Yes, I'm semi-prepared. Didn't know at all what I was going to talk about, roughly. As I said, it's often about the music. It's often about the music that made us. And we have to realize, in the early days of rock and roll, 60s, 70s, the sounds were barely driven, okay? Because there weren't amps that had gain. There weren't loads of pedals. So we could say the crappiness of the sounds stems from that's what they wanted, but also what they could have. And a little bit of drive, which for us today would be almost clean. That back then was considered rebellious tone. But when you listen to it and you give your opinions on that's crap, that's good. I mean, honestly, I get comments saying, sounds like shit. What am I supposed to do with that? Sounds like shit from what perspective, for what style, what is your background, what music do you like, what are you going for, where do you want to go, what tone do you like? Sounds like shit isn't a comment that helps anyone, okay? So, Sunshine of Your Love. It's not a bad recording, but very dull sounds. I guarantee you, if I dialed that sound in for you, you'd go like, what am I going to do with that? Unless you really know that style, that era, and the parts to play with it. Honestly, I wouldn't. If I dialed that in, I'd be like, where's my treble? It's very fuzzy, probably too much power amp distortion. Of course, because that's all they had. I'm with you, my love. Now, I also think that, and I know it's sacrilege to say this, some of the bands just weren't playing on the level of bands today. Now, in terms of tightness, it's just not there. It's not really tight. Did it have to be? No, but I mean, today, we have a much higher level of tightness in the band. So we're going to get to that when we talk about some Randy. But for example, I think it was Communication Breakdown from Led Zeppelin. Leslie's squeaking the wheels. So now I'm confused because my wife's driving around in my driveway. I think she's taking the cardboard to the pound. I was gonna say to the dump. We still have a lot of cardboard from Gear Street. Yeah, those brands just leave all their shit here, and then Leslie's got to deal with it because I need to, make videos. Led Zeppelin, not the toydist thing when it comes to where are the hits. It's very loose. It was probably for the time very, very, very good. Today you would say go back and practice. Listen to the sounds. They're not fat. They're actually almost clean again. I think it is Heartbreaker that I'm going to play for you, where there's a dunk, 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 like kind of what we nowadays would have as a palm muted thing. It's ultra weak. Now, when you say, those great Led Zeppelin sounds, I don't think that's what you mean. I don't think that's what you would dial in. I think you rather remember it a different way. You would dial it in completely differently. If I gave you Jimmy Page's Telly or Les Paul, and that amp in that setting, and go like, now play some Zeppelin, you play like, no, I don't. Where's the punch? Where's the drive? I really think, except for some people, for example, Ignacio from Jensen, he knows that shit. He really knows the tone. He played a little Sun amp or whatever it was called, super mega expensive with Jensen's, and it made specifically for that early Led Zeppelin sound. And he played those riffs and he nailed them and they sounded like them. So he really knows. So some people do know. But a lot of people, when they worship Led Zeppelin, I think they worship the music. They worship what it did for them, what it did for rock and roll. I don't want to distract or take away from any of that. But were they great guitar sounds compared to what we can do today in terms of balance? Not too much fizzy top end, a good amount of low end, and just nice, well-rounded, with fuzz or without, with drive or without. Were they that nice balanced? No, I don't think they were balanced. It was also the times. I think a lot of us don't remember that. And I think we remember it wrong. And if I, again, dial it in for you and say, play that, you go like, that's shit. When if you listen to Zeppelin, you're like, yeah, Zeppelin. And there's a discrepancy there. But again, it's opinions and feeling, emotions, more emotions for the band and the song rather than the sound. But we can't be, and I think that's the main idea of this video, we can't be objective when it comes to music and guitar tone. I like thick necks. I like thin necks. I only play single coils. My guitar has to be blue. I don't like pointy guitars. We all have these opinions, and they come from our influences. Listen to that Led Zeppelin stuff. For me, I was pulled into music because of Bon Jovi. So that's mid to late 80s, let's say. And if you listen to Raise Your Hands, you listen to that riff. It's not massively fat, it's not super modern sounding, but it is balanced. It's more balanced, it's nicely balanced in the mids, there's some definition, there's control, and not fizziness and stuff like this. So that's always what I'd be striving for when I'm looking for a sound. But that's me, okay? You might be totally into Rival Sons and Led Zeppelin and other things, and have a completely different background. So when you say that sounds like shit, that's from your perspective. But also when I say that sounds great, that's from my perspective. I'll try to have the widest perspective possible because I review gear and I don't want to be unfair to gear that might not be suited for me, but generally is good. But sometimes we all fail at that job because we have that emotional attachment to certain tones, shapes, neck thicknesses, okay? Now let's go to Randy Rhoads. I mean, obviously, undoubtedly, massively influential, great player. And when we think of Ozzy, we think of metal. We think of, yeah, Crazy Train and those really heavy sounds. Yeah, but were they? So I have two examples. I think it's Diary of a Madman, I think so, or from Diary of a Madman, and Crazy Train. I only can play short snippets of those, but it is Crazy Train actually almost sounds as if it's all mids. There's no low end. There's no top. It almost is like a cocked wah. But we consider that such a heavy thing. And if you dialed in Crazy Train, you wouldn't play that sound. You would play like a metal sound. If I turned that on, if we profile that sound somehow and I EQ'd it just like that and you played it, most of you wouldn't recognize that you're playing the original Crazy Train setup. Which is fine, but then you have opinions about it. Now, obviously, I have opinions about it too, of course. But all I'm saying is it's impossible to not have opinions about this stuff. But maybe examining where they come from, and before you comment or post or go on a Facebook thing and it sounds like cringe, you don't know what you're doing, it's all crap. Look, it's impossible to be right about any of this. It's impossible. Let's listen to this Diary thing, Matt, whatever, last song on that album. How massively top-endy that sound is. Now, does that make Randy less influential, less good? Does it make the song shit? None of that. It's all still amazing, and it made us the musicians we are, to some of us. But were they the sounds you would do today? I don't know. If I dialed that in, you would probably comment, sounds like shit. When in reality, you've got that album and you love it. Now, when I think of brutal, heavy, bang sound, I think of Nickelback. I know. But as one of my testing new speaker songs, I always put on Feed the Machine. I don't think I ever listened to the song to the end. But that mix from Chris Lord-Alge is insane. And the way that the guitars come in, cut out, of course, edited in the DAW, is massive. Is it as brutal and heavy as some heavier stuff gets? Maybe not. But for me, that's a sound I would strive for. That's what I'm looking for when I'm looking at a rectifier sound, when I'm looking at anything chuggy, drop D, that kind of stuff. But you see, to you, that might not work because it's Nickelback, and just because it's Nickelback. We are not subjective. Never. We can never be. Got a couple more examples here. Let's look at the Stones. Now, Rolling Stones had some massively shit sounds. Influential, yes. Great songs. Songs that influenced generations. Nobody doubts that. Nobody doubts that. But Sympathy for the Devil, that's a big one. I think it's 68. Listen to that solo sound. First of all, shitty playing. That's like something that one of my students will play after like 3 months. Improvise something, and that's kind of what they would do. The sound is some kind of fuzz, but it's really only in the very, very top. And I don't even know what that is. But we celebrate them. We celebrate that song. Okay? I could never release anything even that would get 0.1% of the plays that that song got. But listen to how shit that is. Now, historically, it's not shit. That's what was available at the time, and that's what was cool. Today, we have better sounds. But do we use better sounds? Maybe we don't want better. Maybe we don't even know what better is. Who am I to critique the Stones? Shit playing and shit sound. But that's from this point of view. And that doesn't mean that that's a wrong point of view. But if you love it, that also doesn't mean that that's a wrong point of view. Okay? It's all just taste and what you grew up with. There's nothing in this world of guitar is wrong. Me as a producer, I would have a hard time allowing that sound into a song. On the other hand, I probably have similar sound in songs like this, in certain arrangements, in certain parts, but not as prominent as it would be there. Now, if you listen to the newest Stones album, it's fuzzy, it's dense, it's a vintagey, classic-y sound, but so much more balanced in terms of the top end. There's clear bottom end. It's clearly a Stones performance. It's clearly a Stones sound. It's the song Angry. It's fuzzy, yes, it's his thing, but it's balanced. So nowadays, even the Stones don't sound like the Stones when it comes to being, if you really want to be accurate, everyone evolves. Now, I don't like fuzzes. I have a hard time. I mean, I do like, I have used fuzzes and then I really like the parts, but I have a harder time conceiving of a way to use a fuzz in a way that it serves a song and really works. I think you have to write a riff with a fuzz in mind and a specific fuzz. I would usually not tend to use a fuzz, but when you listen to Rival Sons, it's some of the most horrible sounds in the world of guitar. They are dirty, they are top-endy, they are way low-endy, everything is there. Some of the really worst sounds you can possibly imagine, but they're doing it extremely creatively and they're making it work. It's their sound and they really nail it in a way that I really love it. Does that mean if I hear a sound like you're going to hear in a sec, I recognize how you can use it? I recognize its brilliance in a certain context? I would hope so, but I can't guarantee that. You can't guarantee if you hear a sound like that, you go like, that's cool, I would know what to do with it. Because it takes a certain approach and a certain background, and we all have a different background. What's the point of this video? I don't know. We all have different backgrounds. Stuff that you think you love to death and it's perfect might not be perfect. Shitty sounds, shitty playing. Led Zeppelin. Doesn't mean Led Zeppelin's bad. That's the point. Okay? We all come from somewhere else. And especially in music. It's a wide range. Really, Leslie? She just said, boys come from the stupid factory. Oh, I married that woman. We all come from somewhere else musically, and we love to jump into someone else's world and say that shit. Look, I'm guilty. You're guilty. We all are. I go through a quad cortex and like, that's stupid. Who the fuck needs that? That's musically not usable. And again, I try my very best to consider other styles, other players, other approaches. But I talked to Loki Davidson from Poly yesterday about a new product. And he's like, well, do you know that band? Do you know that band? Do you know that band? Do you know this amp? Do you know this amp? Do you know this amp? And I had to say, no, 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 no. So his approach to the product, I am completely unfamiliar with. And judging it from my point of view would be extremely unfair to the product, because for certain styles and bands and sounds that he's going for with the product, it's absolutely right. So I have to work hard to put a lot of my influences aside, but it's almost impossible, because you're always like, I'm looking for a certain sound. I'm looking how I want to feel playing that sound. But that's my feeling, okay? I try to do the best for all of you to cover a lot of feelings, but it isn't really always possible. So if you want to keep writing, that sucks, sounds like shit, go right ahead, that's the internet. Maybe put a qualifier there. Sounds like shit because I actually like a very bass-staffed stone sound with lots of power amp fizzle. I don't know. You know, maybe some details and qualification on sounds like shit comments would be nice. But of course, there's millions of people on forums. I mean, try to go into the Marshall aficionado owners forum, and then, you know, it's only Marshall that counts. Or there's 50,000 people in the Katana group, and Katana is a brilliant amp, but it's not a tube amp. And they're all gonna, of course, think that the Katana is the best and you don't need anything else. And it's, you know, everything else is just not, I mean, some of them. We are all just so opinionated. Maybe we all, including me, should realize that some people will only buy Ibanez even though they don't have lock-in tuners. And that's just their thing, because it brings them back to their childhood when they had their first Ibanez, and it did something. So every time they buy one, that comes back. There's a myriad, that's a word, of reasons to like certain gear, certain sounds, certain bands. And it's tough to accept and let other people like what they like, because we're just also opinionated. Me too. But maybe take some of that into account next time you talk music with someone. Maybe ask, what did you grow up with? What were your favorite tones? And maybe go back to some of your favorite stuff that defined you and find out if you really still like the sounds. Is Led Zeppelin really, is Randy Rhoads really the tone you're going for? Or is it the feel of Ozzy that you're going for, but with modern sounds? Yeah, we could talk about this all day long, but I gotta go to Guitar Summit now. So I gotta pack up, edit this video, and do that. That being said, I hope you had a good Sunday morning with me. Thank you for watching. I love you all, no matter what sounds you like. Animals at the end.